How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000. As today, we're going to talk more about our next potential threats when it comes to snowfall for the Midwest and Northeast. So let's begin by taking a look at the European model's latest initialization. So if we were to take a look at around a 150-hour mark and then a little bit past that, we do see a winter storm develop mostly for the interior Northeast. Now, if we were to take a look at the forecast hour, of course, it's still very far out, but we do see a very large area of heavy snowfall throughout the Northeast, and we could even see gusty winds with this as well, with its millibar pressure dropping rapidly thanks to the amount of instability that's right over this low pressure system at this time. Plenty of cold air that's just to the west of it, so that's certainly gonna help this storm rapidly intensify by the time it approaches the Northeast, as this would easily dump potentially up to a foot of snowfall in portions of the interior Northeast. So this would be quite significant. And when it comes to the coastal Northeast, at least in this scenario, the European model isn't expecting the snowfall to move that far west, as it seems like the ridging is a little bit too strong in this scenario for that to happen for the east coast of the Northeast. So that's definitely something we're gonna pay close attention to over the next few days, because we have also seen initializations where the snowfall does affect the coastal Northeast cities, as really it's very variable when it comes to the strength of the high pressure system that's located just to the off the Atlantic coast when it comes to the past few initializations, as it's going to take some time for the forecast to definitely gain more certainty. And if we were to take a look at the GFS model, on the other hand, when it comes to that specific snowstorm, the GFS model isn't expecting as powerful of a storm system, mainly because it doesn't expect northwesterly flow to be as significant, as the pressure gradient is weaker, which means that we're seeing that cold air move less further southward, and as a direct result of that, we don't see enough instability for this storm system to rapidly intensify. So while we do see snow showers over the same areas of the interior Northeast, the snowfall rates are definitely a lot weaker in this scenario. Now, you're probably wondering what will be the key that will determine if we'll see a significant snowstorm or not for the Northeast, and who exactly will experience the heaviest snowfall. So if you're right up along the coastal Northeast cities like New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston, and even as far south as Washington, D.C., the best hope you could have is that the European model scenario is a slightly more correct model, because the European model is expecting a more significant jet stream dip, even though it isn't necessarily taking the snowfall that far to the southeast to affect the coastal Northeast cities. It at least shows that it could be that higher possibility that maybe the forecast could change, where the cold air moves far south and east enough for those cities to get affected. So the key thing will be how strong the ridging is right over the Pacific coast of the United States, because if we were to take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly, the key thing that you'll notice when taking a look at the European model scenario is that the ridging is a lot stronger right over the Pacific Northwest, and what that does is that enhances the northwesterly wind speed, because there's a stronger pressure gradient with a stronger ridge associated with this low pressure system that's going to be just to the east of it, and that will allow the cold air to move much further southward for not only the snowfall rates to increase, but the chance of snowfall to be a little bit higher for those further south and eastward. But the interior Northeast in this scenario would regardless see a significant winter storm out of this, and the southeast and the coastal Northeast cities would have a higher possibility of receiving snowfall as well if we were to see the northwesterly flow become strong enough to allow that cold air to move far south enough to affect those cities. Now, in the GFS model scenario, the key difference is that this ridge we clearly see is a lot weaker. We don't really see those darker reds associated with this ridge, so we see a much weaker northwesterly flow. The cold air doesn't move as far south, and as a result of that, the rain snow line doesn't move that far south either. So the snowfall is mainly relegated to the interior Northeast, and with weaker instability, the snowfall rates are going to be weaker as well, which means that it would be a less significant snowfall event for portions of the interior Northeast. So we're going to definitely need to pay very close attention to how this ridge builds over the next week or so. We won't get a really good idea until probably early next week once this trough eventually makes landfall somewhere between the Pacific Northwest and the coast of British Columbia. That's when we'll get a good idea of how strong the ridging will be over the Pacific Northwest. So it's going to take some time before we get our answers, but I'll certainly keep you guys updated once we do get those answers. But let's say the European model scenario was completely correct when it comes to snowfall accumulation. This would be its current forecast, and as you can clearly see, this would be a very significant snowfall event for much of the interior Northeast, where we'd be talking about a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snowfall, and in the higher elevations, it could easily be over a foot. So it's definitely something you need to be aware of, especially in the interior Northeast and even the coastal Northeast. At least just keep tabs on this. It's definitely far from guaranteed you're going to receive snow from this, as it very well could be an all-rain event. But when we're talking about forecasts this far out, you can't disregard any possibilities. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next several days regarding the status of our next potential winter storm for the Northeast and even the Great Lakes region. In terms of other things we're keeping an eye on for the United States this week, so when it comes to temperatures, we should see a pattern change where eventually this ridge will eventually move further eastward, and that will lead to a rise in temperatures for much of the United States. Definitely much warmer than what you've been experiencing right over the Midwest especially. So for some, that might certainly be good news that you're hoping for those warmer temperatures or for spring to come along, as this should at least sort of make progress towards feeling more spring-like. Although I'll say it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's definitely permanent yet, and it's unlikely that you're going to receive temperatures as high as what you'd expect for spring, but it certainly should be warmer than what you've been experiencing over the past few weeks for much of the Midwest and the Northeast. And when it comes to precipitation, it should relatively be quiet for much of the U.S. as, like I said, this ridge is going to be dominating for the next few days. We will have a trough that will eventually come ashore right up along the Pacific Northwest, right up the coast of Washington as well as Oregon, and we should see snowfall, of course, in the higher elevations of the Cascades and the Rocky Mountain ranges, at least the northern Rocky Mountain ranges. So definitely watch out for that. And then continuing to move forward, we will eventually see this trough move through, and it could bring some snow showers to the northern portion of Minnesota and North Dakota. At this point, the forecast is relatively certain when it comes to this trough. There's still time for the forecast to change, certainly, since we're still around 4 days out. But when we look at the European model's forecast as well at around the same time period, we see that it's somewhat similar, but the European model, of course, is taking a little bit less precipitation, and it's a little bit faster when it comes to moving this trough. But it's mainly bringing snowfall over the same areas, mainly around the same amount as well. So definitely keep that in mind throughout much of the Midwest, or at least the extreme northern portions of the Great Lakes. You should maybe see isolated snow showers by the time we approach early next week. So definitely keep that in mind. And then after that, it should be relatively quiet for much of the United States outside of this next winter storm. But I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next several days if we do see any new developments when it comes to the, our latest forecast runs, because of course we know that weather changes quite quickly. So like we said, there's this trough we're going to need to keep an eye on, and then also this trough could be more interesting a little bit later, like I was mentioning. But the GFS model is taking a much weaker scenario. We see that the snowfall isn't as strong, so definitely keep a close eye on that. And after that, it should be very uncertain, the forecast. We do have another trough moving through, taking a fairly similar track, but mainly bringing rainfall to much of the United States. But it could bring that possibility of another Arctic blast, and I'll certainly keep you guys updated once we get a bit more certainty by the time we approach, by the time we cross that bridge. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.